Namaste. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Sean Higgins toko ingoa, ko Curator Pictorial, ke tamaki paenga hira aho I mahi ana. I greet you, your ancestors, and your descendants. My name is Sean Higgins, and I'm Curator Pictorial at Auckland War Memorial Museum. I'm going to talk to you today about the Sir Edmund Hillary Archive on the UNESCO Memory of the World Register. The title of my talk is Big in Stature, Big in Heart, the humanitarian story of the Sir Edmund Hillary Archive. I'm talking about Sir Edmund Hillary, who he is, and the UNESCO Memory of the World Register collection that he's part of. I'm going to tell you about perhaps a more lesser known aspect of his work called Schoolhouse in the Clouds, about building schools. And then I'm also going to talk about building hospitals and the Himalayan Trust. Slide 1. On the 29th of May 1953, Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary stood together on the summit of Sagarmatha, Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. Now, some 70 years on, the world knows these men for their incredible feats of endurance and determination. Sir Edmund Hillary was called Surah Sahib, the Big of Heart, but it was not because he climbed Everest. Hillary himself said his greatest achievement was building schools and hospitals for the Sherpa people he spent so much of his life with. It is more than 60 years since the first school was built in Kumjong, and there are generations that have been taught and treated in the schools and hospitals that he helped construct. Today, this work is continued in the Himalayan Trust, and Sir Edmund left his legacy to his homeland. That is to say, Auckland Museum has the collection which represents his life's work. But there is another part to his legacy that remains in the hearts of the people in Nepal. Slide 2. The Sir Edmund Hillary Archive was inscribed to the UNESCO Memory of the World Register in 2013. This rich archive contains papers, photographs, and audiovisual material and documents relating to his long career. Expeditions to the Himalayas, Antarctica, India, and others are among the subjects represented in this collection, documenting everything from paying Sherpa porters to international diplomacy, lectures, and even letters from children following his adventures. Some of the highlights in the archive include slide 3, Sir Edmund Hillary's expedition diary from the 1953 Everest expedition. This is his first-hand account of the climb to the top of Everest. The documentary heritage allows the reader to accompany him, sharing in the historic journey. I'm going to read you a section from the diary. It reads, I continued on cutting steadily, surmounting bump after bump and cornice after cornice, looking eagerly for the summit. It seemed impossible to pick it and time was running out. And finally I cut around the back, an extra large hump, and then on a tightrope to its top. Immediately, it was obvious that we had reached our objective. We were on top of Everest. He goes on to say that they spent 15 minutes on top, had mint cake, and then left at 11:45 a.m. Slide 4. This is perhaps one of my favorite little letters in the archive. This is from the Transantarctic Expedition correspondence, and it's a letter from an admirer. This letter was sent to Sir Edmund Hillary by a school student. It reads, I would like to come and see you very much. How many miles is it from Papakura to the South Pole? Would it take more than a night or not? Is the whole hut healthy? And are the dogs having a good time? Would you like a present when you come back? Would you please get me a live penguin for me, please? Slide 5. A moment with Yusuf Kash. Yusuf Kash, the Armenian photographer who operated in Canada, is one of the finest portrait photographers of his time. There used to be a saying, when one was kashed, it meant they had been photographed by Yusuf Kash. In 1960, Sir Edmund Hillary sat for such a portrait in Chicago, USA. Kash was famous for bringing out the nature of the person in front of him. He had a particular way of understanding people's essence. He'd use little tricks, sometimes add props. With Sir Edmund Hillary, he sat him down in front of him and put a ventilator fan in front of him. And you can immediately imagine Sir Ed might have been a little bit annoyed. Why is this wind blowing in my face? But the expression when he became comfortable was one that we're quite familiar with, the outdoor adventurer in his element. Slide 6. The Sir Edmund Hillary archive is 30 linear meters of documentary heritage. The bulk of the archive comprises of written material like letters, diaries, and scrapbooks. That's about 20 meters of linear storage. And then the photographic material, which is kept in a different storage because of its requirements in cool stores, is some 10 meters more, with about 7,000 images in the form of slides. Many of those are Kodachrome, and Kodachrome is probably one of the most amazing film media made. It has tremendous color, very tiny grain, can go down to ASA or ISO in modern speak, 64, so tiny, tiny, tiny grain. And that gives you very high resolution, but it's very unforgiving. So anyone that chooses to use Kodachrome for photography has to know that they need good light and have some understanding of what they're doing. Interestingly, Sir Edmund Hillary and his friends often chose to use Kodachrome. And then we have black and white film in the archive as well, which they chose to use as well. And some of that is roll film, which is quite difficult to see on its own. But luckily, we also have contact proof sheets made by them where they've printed individual rolls, 5 strips at a time, so that you can actually get a sense of what's in them. These let us look at many aspects of Sir Ed's adventures, but of course there is another side to exploration. Slide 7. After the ascent of Everest, the heroes returned to the outside world, but it wasn't long before another expedition was planned. The 1953 expedition team stayed and employed Sherpa on their 53 expedition as both guides and porters. They were integral to being able to move supplies around this region. It was very difficult to navigate if you didn't know where you're going. And even then, you needed considerable experience. Meeting the people who called this region home would change Sir Edmund Hillary's life forever. He formed a lifelong relationship with them, starting with his climbing companion, Tenzing Norgay Sherpa, and their families have maintained a close friendship. Imagine what these men shared climbing Everest and putting their lives in each other's hands. Slide 8. Taking tractors across Antarctica. Sir Edmund Hillary went to Antarctica in 1956 and 57. Driving a tractor to the South Pole is not something most people can say they've tried. This was the Trans-Antarctic expedition designed to cross Antarctica from one side to the other. On the side that Hillary started from, he constructed the Scott Base Research Station that is still in use today. Slide 9. The Silver Hut. In 1960, the Himalayas beckoned once more. This started with a plan to experiment with the effects of living at high altitude. It was called the Himalayan Scientific Expedition, taking a temporary building up to a mountain and living in it for a winter. It was funded as both science and adventure, with Hillary leading the search for a Yeti. The men living in the Silver Hut tested living conditions and breathing by cycling and undergoing regular examination at high altitude. The more PR-friendly aspect of the expedition, in order to gain interest from the public, was search for a Yeti. And to do this, Hillary engaged a lot of local knowledge to find various things, such as footprints, and test them against what was known. The expedition gave birth to more lifelong friendships, and once more Hillary enjoyed the hospitality of the Sherpa. Whilst resting from a difficult climb at Makalu, Hillary focused attention on a new project in the Kumjong Valley. Slide 10. The Schoolhouse in the Clouds. Compared with expeditions, an equally substantial component of the Sir Edmund Hillary archive tells a story of decades of support for the Sherpa people, raising funds and travelling to the region to improve infrastructure in the remote region by bringing education and healthcare. Hillary found there was much to do to improve the lives of the Sherpa. Slide 11. Kumjong School, 1961. It starts with a schoolhouse at Kumjong. Acquiring corrugated aluminium from the Indian Aluminium Company, Hillary and his small team constructed a schoolhouse for the village. They added a pair of seesaws, which added much enjoyment to the future students who helped on the site. Slide 12. This is the first intake of students with their teacher. Edmund Hillary said, "The opening ceremony was a remarkable occasion. Surrounded by clouds and fog with frequent showers of rain, the villagers celebrated the important occasion with great enthusiasm. I was invited to cut ribbons and open the door." Slide 13. The school grew in size as children from the region would walk several hours to get to school. Their parents wanted them to have an education for the future, and despite their many chores, they made the walk. The archive has many rolls of film that are shown printed in these contact sheets. It's quite interesting because you can have a look at what's taken side to side in each photograph. It's not always the same image again. Sometimes there's a few gems that perhaps haven't been printed. Slide 14. By 1987, the school had several buildings and provided multiple levels of education, and in time, a high school classroom would also be constructed. Here's another view showing several of the buildings and the students outside and entering them. Slide 15. Slide 16. Tami School, 1963. When Kumjong School was made, it started an appetite for more. And unsurprisingly, requests were made. Tami village Sherpa leaders asked Hillary for a school, saying, "Though our children have eyes, but still they are blind." In 1967, Hillary turned his entire focus to aid projects raising money for Tami and Pangbokche schools and a pipeline at Kumjong. You can see this at the Tami schoolhouse in this picture. It's the bright red building in the front of the picture. Look how it stands out from the surrounds. There's a wonderful sense of scale when you understand where these villages are located. Slide 17. These two adorable children are at Tami outside the schoolhouse, both greeting with namaste to the photographer taking the photo. See how it was painted with decoration. A tribute to a village that wanted something like this, a lovely school that was beloved by its village people. Slide 18. The schools gave children a chance to do as their parents dreamed for them. When Hillary said, when they said to Hillary, "We want them to have more choices than being porters." It was important for Sherpa to know that their children were looking to the sky and finding ways to achieve new things. And these children are the future. Now considerably older, no doubt, as these photos were taken some time ago, but just that feeling of hope when you look at them and understand that they're learning and fashioning their own futures. Perhaps futures that they might not have had it not been for all of the efforts made to try and build these schools. Slide 19. Hillary said people create goodwill. Money cannot do it on its own. In the decades to come, it was the people that Hillary worked alongside, both Sherpa and volunteers, who would make these projects grow. These are just some of the images that show children in the school, learning, children outside, and then also how the schools were made, standing on the roof. It was a team effort. Everybody pulled together. Villagers, volunteers, everybody came, carried the supplies, and helped to make these schools. Slide 20. Bridge building was also an essential project. There were massive rivers that needed to be crossed, streams fast flowing down through the mountains. And of course, in order to get supplies to each village, you had to carry them across these obstacles. So the more bridges that could be in place, the easier it was to bring these much needed supplies. And so one of the things that Edmund Hillary worked on was building more bridges. And alongside the bridges, slide 21, alongside the bridges were water pipelines. Water is also difficult to obtain when you have villages at high altitude and are reliant on the natural flow of streams. So what they did was create pipelines. And you can see children playing in the top image as they have a tap, probably for the first time in this village, that is flowing regularly, rather than a pool that would have to be filled by rain. And on the lower image, you can see Edmund Hillary himself laughing with joy as water comes out, probably after hours of trying to get a pipeline in place. A very fulfilling thing that all of the children enjoyed, and everybody would have celebrated that water was now at Kumjung. Slide 22. The other thing that was really required was an easier way to access these places. I've already mentioned that everything had to be carried in, but at great distance across massive mountain ranges, like the one behind me. Can you imagine how difficult it would be to have to carry them all the way? Well, an airstrip was to be constructed, and it was no easy feat to construct an airstrip in the Himalayas in this region. Ed Hillary looked for some time until he found some land, purchased the land, and then, with the help of the locals at Lukla, started to make an airstrip. This required taking large rocks, moving them around, dragging a large formation in order to smooth an airfield. Dr. Mike Gill describes landing at the Lukla airstrip, and he says, "The twin otter comes in fast, bounces on the stones and dry dirt out of the runway, roars steeply up the strip past the remains of a crashed plane, and just as it seems inevitable it will crash into the houses ahead, the propellers, screaming in reverse pitch, break the plane to a halt. The engines cut, and you step out into a profound mountain silence." I think that captivates a lot of the appeal of the Himalayas to all these volunteers. It's a hard place, but it's a beautiful place to be as well. Slide 23, the Himalayan Trust and the hospitals. In the same year that Hillary was building schools, another dire need became visible. A smallpox outbreak was taking lives in the region. The population was not vaccinated against it. Hillary used a radio to request an airdrop from the Red Cross. In under a week, 3,000 people were vaccinated. After the smallpox vaccinations, Hillary said, "Why not provide Sherpas with a simple hospital to meet basic needs, including vaccination against common preventable diseases?" Kumjung Clinic was to become the first of such, and that would be a project to carry out a medical survey. And from there, others would arrive. Max Pearl came, Hillary returned in '64, and they too did more surveys, looking at the medical condition of local Sherpa. Through 1965, Max Pearl helped with fundraising for a hospital. Slide 24. In 1966, work began on the hospital. Building in the mountains meant supplies had to be carried in, as I've said, and what mountains to carry them over. The Hillary Archive has a lot of photographs of different format, and one of the things we like to try and do is show some of those media. That's why these images aren't all cropped, and that you can have a look and see what's written on the side of the negatives and positives in this case. Sometimes it's a photographer, sometimes it's a cryptic piece of information, a number. It all has research value, what I like to call the unasked question, something that all research collections need to bear in mind. Every little thing can provide information to someone in the future. But of course, what's interesting about this image is where it is. Right on a mountain range. Here they are on top of a building that they're constructing, laying down sheets of roofing. What a view. Slide 25. Building was carried out by Hillary, shown here with a piece of roofing in his hand, and Kiwi builders, including his friend Nev Waterson from his beekeeping days. But he also had a large local Sherpa team who covered everything from stone cutting to carpentry, shown here with the stonemason on the right. It was a team effort. It was integral that they worked together, and the expertise of using Sherpa methods of stone cutting and building alongside materials that Ed and his team were familiar with created a combination of the two. And it seemed to work rather well. Slide 26. Here's the Kunde Hospital when it's finally finished. As you can see, it has a metallic roof that enables it to withstand regular snows, but the insulating properties of stone walls. When the hospital was finished, people would come from all over the region to be vaccinated against common diseases. Much like the schools that I mentioned earlier, people were willing to travel a long way to get to these resources. These were things that they had not had, but certainly desired, and they would walk to them. Slide 27. Of course, something was missing. Hospital needed a doctor. Following its completion, Hillary recruited Diane John McKinnon in 1966 with the help of the Volunteer Services Abroad. That's a New Zealand organisation for volunteer work. And here you can see them inside. Diane sitting on the ladder, Nurse Young Ian Sherpa in the middle, and Dr. John McKinnon on the left. Slide 28. The archive shows some of the visiting patients with Dr. McKinnon and local children who came to learn with Diane McKinnon. I love watching how there seems to be such joy in the children's eyes as they learn new things, full of curiosity, as everybody should be. Slide 29. Medical work would continue, and after the McKinnon's service, Max Pearl would find another couple, Dick and Leslie Evans. And this trend would continue, so that the hospital would always have doctors. Slide 30. Sir Edmund Hillary and Louise are seen together here on the left in this picture. Together, the couple founded the Himalayan Trust to support the people of Nepal. Building on the schools and hospital projects, the Trust provided a stable foundation for fundraising and ensuring such work continued. There was an ongoing need, and it was met by the Himalayan Trust. This beautiful view, taken by Mike Gill, looks towards Everest in the distance. It kind of evokes a feeling to me of the place and what it means to so many people, both in Nepal and beyond. The Himalayan Trust has built 26 more schools, 2 airstrips, 2 hospitals, 12 health clinics, and rebuilt the Tenboche Monastery, which was destroyed by fire in 1989. The monastery was a place both admired for its beauty and views such as the slide I showed at the beginning, or the image behind me, which is also taken from Tenboche Monastery. And also admired for its cultural significance. Again, the Himalayan Trust and Sir Edmund Hillary had managed to help the Sherpa with something important to them. Hillary and his friend Dick Blum raised $400,000 for the reconstruction of the monastery, and that was completed in 1993. Slide 32. Sir Edmund Hillary in this scene is at the opening of Bakanye School. Probably one of the most lovely photographs of him taken by Louise Hillery. It's an adorable scene that shows Ed in his element, his real element. He's not climbing mountains, but helping people. Hillery devoted himself to improving the lives of the people who live in the shadow of the tallest mountains in the world. Generations have grown up with the schools and hospitals built by a man who dedicated a large portion of his own life to humanitarian causes, to people, and the right to learn and be healthy. I think if we had more people like Ed in the world would certainly be a better place. Somebody selfless, somebody completely understanding of people's basic fundamental need. Sir Edmund Hillary was big in stature, but he was even bigger in heart. Thank you.